Hello Facebook and welcome back. Today we're going to be cooking a lightened up version of meatloaf, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it today because meatloaf is one of my favorite things to make. Not only because it tastes good, but also because there's a lot of food science that goes into the making of meatloaf that I hope you enjoy as much as I do. So, what makes our meatloaf lightened up? We are going to put a hefty dose of vegetables in there, and the meats I've chosen, which I'll talk more about in a minute, have a lower calorie, lower fat properties. So let's get started. I'm going to start by preheating our oven. Hit go there, and we're going to also heat up a pan. Okay. All right. Why heat up a pan? Well, it's because we're going to be putting some vegetables in this meatloaf, specifically zucchini, carrot, and onion. Okay. When you are putting vegetables into something like meatloaf that's going to be cooked anyway, you might be tempted to skip the step where you saute them, but don't, because what's happening whenever you cook the vegetables is you're taking the edge off of some of those bitter vegetable tastes, right? And you're also helping the vegetable to kind of disappear into the loaf. You'll notice I have my trusty grater here again. If you've been following along with our other videos, you know that I love myself my box grater. But the reason I want to do this is because I don't really want people to know that my meatloaf has a bunch of zucchini in it. Whenever you grate it up, you create a lot of surface area to help the zucchini just kind of disappear into the meatloaf. Per pound of meat, you are going to want about 3/4 of a cup of zucchini. So that'll be about half of this, medium-sized zucchini. Okay. Next up is my carrot. I'm gonna take off the ends there. And I washed this carrot earlier, but I'm not gonna peel it or scrub it up too hard. There's a lot of nutrients in the skin, and carrot skins are pretty thin anyway, and I'm gonna grate it. So I'm not gonna end up with that much skin per piece. Per pound of meat, you want about 2 to 3 tablespoons, so not a lot, like a quarter of this carrot. Okay, getting my little vegetable confetti going on over here, all over the place. Okay, put that in there. Next up is my onion. This is not a whole onion. I have a pretty small household. There's only 2 adults in my house, and so we don't often go through a whole onion whenever I'm cooking dinner. And so I just use what I need for the recipe I'm making, and then put the rest of the onion back in the fridge. And that way it's always ready to go. It's right within reach, and I don't feel like I'm wasting that much food. Now this onion, I'm gonna cut my piece there. When I cut an onion, I want to leave the root end intact. And the reason for that is it helps hold all the pieces together, because onions, they have those layers, and so they can get kind of messy on your cutting board. But so leave the root end there, because it'll help hold your onion together while you're cutting it up. I'm gonna take off the top layer there, just peel that, put it to the side. Then I'm gonna cut into this towards the root end, just kind of in a little raise a sunshine pattern there. Okay. And because of the natural shape of the onion, I only need to cut it this way once, because whenever I cut it this way, it's already going to fall into those nice tiny dices. All right, so it keeps it clean, keeps it out of my way, and just makes some nice uniform shapes. Okay, so I was tricky and sliced up all my vegetables ahead of time for my cooking demo here. So I have my zucchini, my carrot, and my onion in here. I'm gonna take this. My pan is hot. I'm gonna turn that just slightly. A little bit of cooking oil. I'm using an olive oil, light tasting. I always use light tasting, not extra virgin, for cooking, because the extra virgin olive oil has some pretty good health properties, but the parts of the olive that end up in the extra virgin olive oil that make it green can burn and cause bitter taste. All right, spread my oil around in there. a nice sizzle. Okay. So I'm just gonna spread my veggies around in there. They're cooking on low, medium low. We're gonna give them a couple minutes to start to sweat and bring their flavors together. I'm cooking these vegetables so that they get more tender, so that in my meatloaf I don't end up with like a bite of carrot here, a bite of onion there. The whole flavor is gonna be nice and melded together. And we're gonna be disappearing into the meatloaf. While that's cooking, I want to cut up a garlic. I didn't put garlic in with the rest of them because garlic has a tendency to burn. So I'm gonna throw it in about 1 to 2 minutes before the rest of the vegetables are done, which is why I'm preparing it separately. Garlic is one of my favorite flavors. It's in almost everything I cook, but it's kind of a pain to deal with sometimes. And so I learned a trick from a chef friend a long time ago of how to peel a garlic clove. Now, this is not for the faint of heart, all right? I promise you are not in any danger, but we're gonna use the flat edge of the flat side of our knife rather, to smash this garlic clove. But I don't want to come anywhere near the blade end of it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna face my blade down, I'm gonna take my fist and thunk it right here. My fingers did not come anywhere near to the sharp side, okay? But if you are worried about it, go ahead and peel your garlic clove however you are accustomed to doing so. But I like doing it this way because whenever I smashed it, it all peels off and mostly in one piece. So I don't have to deal with a bunch of funky cloves. When I peeled that one, the root end came off with it, so I don't have it on this one, which is nice. I'm also gonna just start cutting it up there. Another function of the smashing is that it kind of breaks the clove down and opens it up so that the individual fibers are already kind of separated out. So my garlic's ready to go. I didn't have to like chop it a bunch of times. So, all right, those are cooking up really nice. My onion is getting a little bit clear. My zucchini is getting clear. And my carrots are getting very tender. So they're almost done. I'm gonna put this garlic in here. There we go. Again, my finger did not come anywhere near the sharp side of my knife. You'll notice whenever I took it up off the thing, I kind of like pushed it up, kind of like a dustpan when you're sweeping the kitchen floor. And then whenever I swept it into the pan, I swept from the top of my knife down. You never, ever, 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 ever want to bring any part of your body from the sharp side of your knife up. You always want to go down. Just a friendly reminder there. Okay, so my garlic's in here. Okay, that is just about done. While that's finishing up, I'll turn that down because I have some more stuff to talk about. I don't want to get too done while I'm talking to you. The next ingredient group that we're going to put in this meatloaf is called a panade. Okay, so panade is a French word and it basically means a starch plus a liquid. If you've made meatloaf before, you probably put breadcrumbs or cracker crumbs or something in the meatloaf. And that's an important piece of a meatloaf recipe because ground meat in particular tends to really become tough and dry when you bake it. And so what the panade does, and my starch component here is crackers. I'm putting about 1/4 cup in for every pound of meat. That ended up being like 8 crackers or so. Just gonna smash them up with my rolling pin right here. Just putting that in a little plastic baggie there. Okay. I made my little cracker crumbs there. If you prefer breadcrumbs, you certainly can use those. My mom always used saltines, so I do. I like how they taste. And then the liquid that we're gonna add into this is an egg. All right. Got some farm fresh eggs from an aunt the other day, so these are coming straight to you from the farm. So there's part of our liquid, and the other liquid that we're gonna add to our starch is in our vegetables here. Okay. Okay, so cooking these vegetables together, they have definitely started to release some of their moisture, and we're gonna throw that in here. Because in order for our panade to do its job, which is to, like I said, keep those protein fibers in our ground beef from clinging too tightly together and getting tough, this is going to form a gel when we add heat. Starch plus liquid plus heat equals gel. That's why whenever you thicken up gravy, you put flour in. Whenever you are making oatmeal, starch, oatmeal, plus liquid, water, plus heat, microwave, equals paste. That is, at its very foundation, a panade, okay? So, this collection of ingredients here is going to keep our meatloaf tender and moist. Just mix that up in there. You'll see that what I have in this bowl is probably about a cup and a half. And when I add in my meat, I'm using a 1/2 pound of ground turkey and a 1/2 pound of ground beef. I'm gonna end up with slightly more than 2 cups of meat to 1.5 cups of vegetable and starch. That is why meatloaf kind of got the, gained popularity in the Great Depression, is whenever it became like a classic American dish, because it made meat, which was very expensive, go farther. And it did it by putting in a cheaper ingredient like the starches to kind of spread it out, make it go farther. I am choosing a lean ground beef and a ground turkey. My ground turkey is about 15% fat, 85% lean. I do not want to use the 93% lean turkey for this application because it will get tough even though we have our starch gel in there, and even though we have the vegetables in there to kind of hang on to some of that extra moisture. So even though I'm not choosing the leanest turkey, it does have a nice fat profile. And what I mean by that is if we compare turkey to beef, I'm using about 85% lean turkey and about 90% lean beef. So you'd expect that I'd be like, oh, the beef is better, it's got less fat. But that's not the whole story here. If we look at what kinds of fats are in these meat, the beef has about twice as much saturated fat in it as the turkey. And so we know that saturated fat raises the levels of LDL cholesterol, or the lousy, the bad cholesterol, the one we want to keep low. And so by adding in the turkey, I am helping to improve the fat profile of my meatloaf. Now, I don't want to make it out of all turkey because I want beef whenever I have meatloaf, and because the turkey also has a tendency to dry out, so the combination of the two work really well together. Okay, you'll notice I've moved to my hands to mix this up, and that is also an important piece here. I promised you science, and so I will give you science. We talked about how the panade helps keep the proteins from clumping up too tightly together whenever it cooks and causing a tough meatloaf. Mixing with your hands also helps with this. If I just go at it with my spoon, it's too hard. It's too much agitation, and it makes the proteins clump up and not be a good texture at the end. So I'm just getting in here, okay? I am mixing it up until it's all one color. My vegetables are spread throughout there, okay? And now I'm going to rinse off my hands to grab my pan. Don't worry, Facebook, I came back. All right, in my pan. I like to use these silicone baking mats because it makes cleanup super duper easy. You just put it on there and the pan is ready to go, and then you just wash the silicone mat when you're done. I use these for cookies, I use these for meatloaf, I use these for anything that I'm cooking on a cookie sheet because I really don't like to hand wash pans, and my cookie sheets don't fit in the dishwasher very well. honestly. Okay, so I'm gonna make this into a 1 pound meatloaf. I'm gonna be very gentle whenever I form it. I don't wanna mangle it too much because I'm trying to keep things tender. All right, there you go. While it's raw, you can see pieces of the vegetable and pieces of the cracker there. After it's cooked, those do tend to melt away a little bit. This meatloaf, shaped like this, is going to take about 50 to 60 minutes to cook. Making it into 2 smaller meatloaves. Now it's going to take about 25 to 30 minutes to cook. So depending on how crunched for time you are, you might want to put these, you might want to consider that. Something that's really popular right now is meatloaf muffins, where you take a muffin tin and put your meatloaf in there. Those are going to cook even faster still at about like 20 minutes, okay? So again, I'm going to leave camera for a second and rinse off my hands so I don't get a bunch of raw meat on my stove, okay? So our oven preheated to 350 degrees. Okay. Facebook magic, and our meatloaves are done. All right, ooh, I'm running away. This is what they look like when they're cooked. You can still see a little bit of the onion, but all of the cracker pieces have totally fallen away. You can see a little bit of green flecks here and there, but really the zucchini has, for the most part, disappeared as well. I'm gonna bring this closer so you can see the texture here. I cut one so you can see what, see the texture in there. The mark of a good meatloaf is that when you cut it, it holds its slices. It does not crumble. Okay, so let's see about that. All right, holding its shape, nice. So I got a good level of our panade in there, and it should also be fairly homogeneous in color. We got a good mix there. You can see a little bit of the vegetable here, but you would never know that this meatloaf here is about 1/3 vegetable. To make this a meal at the Zepp house, ye old instant mashed potatoes and a can of green beans. I am a busy person, and so I don't have time to cook a bunch of things for dinner, so I usually cook one thing and then pick my sides accordingly. So this meatloaf cooked for about 25 minutes. While it was cooking, you can pretend that I made a box of mashed potatoes and stuck a can of green beans into the microwave. And that is that, Facebook. That is how you make a lightened up version of meatloaf with a hefty dose of veggies inside. Can't wait to talk to you in about 2 weeks. See ya!